Good evening, guys. It is Tuesday, May 13th, 2025. This Bathrobe business. I'm Georgi Oganov. Where's my name? Wrong side. There it is. I've got my decaf coffee and I've got the news. So I was incredibly shocked this morning with new CPI numbers. So I'm just going to jump right into it. We'll start with this article from USA Today and then we'll move on to CNBC. So CPI came in lower than anticipated. Not only did it come in lower than anticipated, it eased to a 4-year low. That is staggering. I was not expecting that. Now, I wasn't necessarily expecting inflation to be crazy high. I think that, like a lot of Americans, I shop, and so I haven't seen prices surging. But what I wasn't expecting was to see a deflationary move in a lot of products. And that's exactly what we saw. We'll dive into the numbers in a second. But that 4-year low is significant because when you rewind 4 years to 2021 in April, that was when inflation was just getting started. Now, that's not entirely true because prices really did start to surge during COVID, during lockdown, because the Fed was just printing money and giving it out and all production was shut down. But in those capacities, it was very much sector based, like real estate, automotive, a few financial sectors where you saw inflation in the stock market. But on a greater market implication, the consumer hadn't really seen it yet. But then in 2021 is when consumers started seeing it and where the Fed had to start ramping down and tightening up the markets. And that's where we got the raises in interest rates, et cetera. So the fact that it hit that number, it hit pretty much a real pre-inflation number, is staggering. Um, I'm not the most critical of Trump. I try to be as fair as I can in these videos. As I mentioned before, I didn't vote for him in 2016. I did vote for him in 2020. This last round, I didn't vote at all, but I definitely wasn't voting for Kamala. So I'm pretty agnostic when it comes to Trump. I think he is better than a lot of people anticipate, but he's not the 4D chess player that a lot of MAGA voters think that he is. But I kind of have to give this to him 100%. I don't think you can take this away from him. I don't see how you could take this away from him as an absolute victory because we were in the absolute worst of it. The markets were plummeting. We were seeing threats of inflation going through the roof. There was tariffs across the board. There were ships stuck at sea. There were massive amounts of fees and tariffs coming into ports. And after all of that, none of the prices went up. In fact, they decreased. Now, why I feature this USA Today article is because it is making, I think, the strongest case as to why. And they're saying that the reason we didn't see inflation rise was because we saw a slowdown in the economy. So it offset anything that would have raised the price of products and services up was offset by the fact that the economy was moving slower and therefore it couldn't have surge pricing. I think that's the most sympathetic argument. I don't know if I buy it completely, but I think it somewhat rings true. I think there is some justification to that. Now, there's another article I will share in a minute that I think is completely wrong. It takes a completely incorrect perspective on inflation. So I'll share that in just a second. Now, let's shift real quick to another article from CNBC. So this one just dives into numbers a little bit deeper. Remember, all the links to these articles are in the description below. So, Consumer Price Index rose to a seasonally adjusted 0.2 for the month, putting the 12-month inflation rate to 2.3, its lowest since February 2021. So, and I will correct myself. I thought this was the lowest since April of 2021. No, this is February of 2021. The core CPI also increased 0.2 for the month, while the year-over-year level was 2.8. Egg prices tumbled, falling 12.7%, though they're still up 4.39 from last year. I still have to give it to them. We're still seeing a deceleration of egg prices. Across the board, in fact, we saw a deflation in a lot of these numbers. The only numbers that are kind of being sticky are housing and cost of rent and mortgage. That is remaining high. Automotive fees, especially repair and car insurance are remaining high. Now, as I've advocated a long time on this channel, I think insurance is not a lagging indicator. It is a leading indicator. Insurances have a lot of structure built into them where they're trying to predict what the costs of tomorrow are going to be. And a lot of insurance cost is labor. There is something to do with the fact that cars are more expensive now to manufacture, especially with hybrid drivetrains and EVs and everything that is involved with that. But I think also a large component to that is labor. When you're seeing that insurance costs are going up, it's probably a predictor that labor costs are going to go up. And that's usually those sticky inflations numbers that don't actually reduce. You can't fix labor with a supply chain directly. If the cost of a mechanic goes from 35 an hour to 40 an hour, there's no real way you can automate your way out of that. So across the board, we're seeing drops in apparel, drops in fact, actually used vehicle prices did fall. So of all the numbers with automotives, those fell as well. Egg prices tumbled, overall groceries tumbled, almost everything went down. And in addition, let's not forget the article that I shared yesterday, where we actually saw a gain in tax revenue at the port. So we had, in just the month of April, 16 billion in revenue from the tariffs that came in at the ports. That is about a double from where it was last April, and actually an increase from where it was in March as well. So not that I'm ready to 100% say this, but I kind of have to give it to him. I think Trump is kind of knocking it out of the park. He said that we were going to have lower prices and other countries are going to pay for it, and we'll have an external revenue service, and our taxes will go down and their taxes will go up. And so far, that's kind of turning out to be true. I am very surprised. I'm very surprised. But you kind of have to give it to him. I don't think you can say that this isn't a massive victory for the Trump administration. There's no way you can spin it any other way. Now, I will mention this article that I talked about a second ago, the one that I think gets it completely wrong. So here's the inflation breakdown for April 2025 in one chart. And it goes on to talk about how, the interest rates, the inflation isn't truly baked in yet because tariffs haven't truly baked in, because all the goods that we're seeing currently are the non-tariffed goods that are in the pipeline. That argument doesn't make any goddamn sense, because we've always had those goods and services in the pipeline. We've had those goods in the pipeline for the last 4 years. Those goods never stopped being in the pipeline, yet we were still seeing inflation. There's no reason why those goods and services would go up now, would deflate now, because they've always been in the pipeline. So that argument doesn't make any sense. If we didn't see inflation in a drastic way in the last 2 months between March and April, especially now with Trump, maybe this was his whole 4D plan, and the whole time was to ask for 140%, but end up at 30, especially now with Trump modifying his trade policy. I don't think we are going to see massive inflation from these tariffs, because we have been through the worst of it and prices did not go up. They actually fell. So if you didn't see it before, you're not going to see it now, especially in this more tempered administration. Another argument I will throw out there was another channel I listened to where an economist that was very pro-Trump, he made the argument that a lot of times these tariffs are not paid by consumers, they're paid by importers. Because importers are the ones that are usually paying the taxes, and they don't want to lose business, so they're going to find a way to eat the cost or ask those demands of the manufacturer, or go to other manufacturers. So his argument was that these tariffs are paid at the import rate, at for those that are the middlemen, essentially. I don't necessarily buy that argument completely, but that is another argument that I think does come into play here. That despite the fact that we saw all this additional tax revenue coming in and a deceleration in prices, somebody did eat that cost. So while I won't be as sympathetic as to say that's the only cause of what's going on, I think that is possibly one of the factors and undercurrents that are coming into play here as well. So let's move on to Trump's other victories, because he had a lot today. Trump also announced a massive deal with Saudi Arabia, about a $600 investment deal into the U.S. From the Saudi investment fund in a number of capacities. So a large portion of this is military spending. So the good old military industrial complex. So Saudi Arabia agreed to purchase about $142 billion in defense, planes, missiles, AI, tech, etc. That is actually a double from where it was in last year's budget. So it is a substantial investment. The rest of it is being distributed to lots of US tech companies. They're going to DataJolt, Google, Oracle, Salesforce, AMD, and of course, NVIDIA. And that's another story I'll talk about in a second. They're making a massive investment into US data centers, directly into AI companies, and all sorts of infrastructure that comes with it. Now, in addition, NVIDIA is getting its little embargo and some of its restrictions lifted in order to sell its AI chips into Saudi Arabia. So NVIDIA is sending 18,000 of its Blackwell chips over to Saudi Arabia as part of today's deal. So that's definitely going to help NVIDIA's sales numbers, especially since they've been kind of down in the dumps since DeepSeek. Now, I'm going to have a bit of a conspiratorial take on this. I think this is a backroom deal with China. I'm 100% sure on it. The reason is not to say that Saudi Arabia doesn't have a tech sector. It does. I think it's actually kind of underrated as far as a global leader in a lot of things. They are much more tech savvy than you give them credit for, especially with a lot of their military defense spending. They do have a massive investment in a lot of their technology. However, Saudi Arabia has never made it seem like they were in need of lots of AI tech, especially 18,000 AI chips worth, especially since China has proven that you don't need top tier chips in order to manufacture basic AI. Now, you could say, well, maybe they do need it. They were just kind of fudging those numbers. Fair. But Saudi Arabia is not an AI hub at the end of the day. What it's going to do with 18,000 chips doesn't make any sense. However, what they could do is do a backroom deal and just sell them to China at a premium, maybe have a 20% finder's fee for it. I also think that the Trump administration is fully aware of that, and is one of the reasons why they're loosening some of the restrictions to everybody with China. But in this capacity, China will get the chips, and that's why they agreed to what they agreed to in the summit. Because while the summit that they had last weekend wasn't detrimental to China in any meaningful way, it still did give the United States preferential treatment because the US can still charge up to 30% on many products, where China is only going to be charging 10%. So it's not like they're on equal playing fields. At the same time, Trump did forecast that there would be more additions coming to the deal, as this is just a temporary respite in which there would be more regulation on things like AI. I'm sorry, not just AI, intellectual property. So the fact that this comes right after that summit makes me think that this is just a backroom deal to China buying NVIDIA chips. That's completely conspiratorial. I've got no evidence of that, but come on. I mean, we knew these sales were happening through Vietnam, Malaysia, Singapore. Everybody knew it. NVIDIA knew it. I think the smarter people in the Biden administration knew it, but nobody was talking about it. Then Trump came in and started clamping down on those as well. So I think this is just another way to give the Saudis something and to give China something. So I think this is going straight to China. I think a good portion of it is. In addition to all of these deals, the NVIDIA deal, all the investment into the U.S. Infrastructure, Starlink is now going to be allowed in Saudi Arabia as well, and expanding much of its defense and aviation sector. So Starlink has been approved for the aviation and maritime use in the kingdom, as well as, I'm sure, ancillary structures as well. So Saudi Arabia is growing very close with the United States. Just speaking geopolitically, this is kind of getting off on a tangent, but there is the whole talk of the rift moving between Bibi Netanyahu and Donald Trump. Not that Saudi Arabia is necessarily that against Israel anymore. That kind of changed with the Abraham Accords, but Trump is definitely strengthening a lot of his relations in the Middle East, especially since he also removed sanctions from Syria today. So that's just something interesting that I find. That's a bit more politics than business, but just thought I'd throw it in there. Next story I want to talk about is one more thing I want to talk about. Actually, I just remembered. Another reason I don't think Saudi Arabia is going to use any of these chips, and this actually plugs into my next story. In fact, let me share my next story and then I'll elaborate. So Samsung Electronics is to acquire heating and cooling solutions provider FLAC Group. I don't know how to say it. It's a European company. Good luck with that. But they're a massive it's essentially an HVAC company, but they're not so much doing the install as they are doing the manufacturing of heating and cooling. Now, why does Samsung need this? I knew it even before I went down and read the article. It's for AI. So one of the not so dirty secrets, it's pretty out in the open, but everybody seems to neglect it, is that AI data centers produce a ton of heat as they're processing all of the algorithms and all of the neural networks that they do. You have massive warehouses full of AI chips that are just cranking through electricity and producing tons of radiant heat. This is one of the ways that a lot of companies are undercutting it. There's actually massive growth in AI up in I believe it's North Dakota, either North or South Dakota. I forget which one, but one of the Dakotas is growing massively, mainly because of one of these reasons. So they have cheap access to energy, and temperatures are generally there lower even in the summer months. So it's a more temperate climate, and in the winter, it's definitely easier to cool. So AI is growing in a lot of data centers up in that area simply because of just the climate and energy alone. And Samsung is doing this entirely so that they can invest more heavily in AI. So it makes you probably think that Samsung is planning something big if they're willing to invest 1.5 billion in an entire heating and cooling company. But why this place into Saudi Arabia and why I think this is important? While Saudi Arabia has lots of energy, let's not forget that it's selling most of that into the global market. But two, Saudi Arabia is one of the hottest places on earth. It is the last place where you want to be running data centers. It makes more sense for Saudi Arabia to have data centers on foreign soil, like in the United States, than it would to have it on its domestic soil because of just how much heat is on that continent. Country, not continent. I'm an American. I don't know geography. So that's why another reason I think that Saudi Arabia is just buying these to resell them into the private market. I don't believe that they're going to be building data centers anytime soon. It's not efficient by any standard. It's cheaper to do it on foreign soil. So that's everything I have to say about that Saudi Arabia deal. Last story I'm going to cover, I know it's a long video, but there's a lot of good stories today. Last story I'm going to cover is GM. So GM unveiled a groundbreaking new EV battery. So it's a lithium magnesium rich prismatic battery cell. The long story short is that it's a more efficient battery. It's lighter in weight. It's more cost effective because it's easier to manufacture because it doesn't have nickel and cobalt. So a lot of the minerals can be domestically sourced, and magnesium is a lot less expensive than cobalt and nickel. It will have improved efficiency, and it's coming as soon as 2028. This is kind of a major revelation. Ford is working on something similar, but they said that none of their cars will have it until 2030. So GM is probably going to beat them to the market. While this isn't an entirely big game changer for the EV market, it is a substantial game changer. This is to draw a bad analogy that my brother will probably chastise me for later. It's like moving from a carburetor engine to a direct injection. Its efficiency is just going to go up. And a couple groundbreaking moves like this, and EVs will just snuff out gas entirely. So it is a major development. It will be interesting to see. Hopefully it does happen. They are planning to manufacture directly into some of their new models, including, I believe, their Escalade IQ and the Chevy Silverado truck, as well as I want to say the Blazer is going to have that as well, but I could be wrong on that. But I swear I read that in this article. So yeah, look forward to seeing that in 2028. So that is, while that seems far off, that's usually the lead time for most manufacturing of new models. Let's not forget that usually a new model has about a 3-year lag. So the fact that they're saying 2028 means that this is next line up for their EV roster. So this is definitely on the horizon. If they're already saying 2028, that means they're already going to start building and developing them now. So that's it. Those are the stories of the day. I hope you guys have a fantastic Wednesday, very productive, and I'll see you guys back here tomorrow.